Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Monday, May 13th. I'm Abby Larico. The Missouri Legislature is set to adjourn on Friday. While lawmakers passed the state budget last week, there are a few big issues that could still come up in the final days. St. Louis Public Radio's Brian Moline spoke with Statehouse reporter Sarah Kellogg about what has to happen in this last week of the 2024 Missouri legislative session. That's coming up on The Gateway. Washington University will hold its graduation ceremony this morning, but 9 employees and 23 students will not be allowed to participate. WashU suspended them and barred them from campus for being arrested while trying to set up an encampment to protest the school's ties to Israel and the war in Gaza and demand the university cut all ties to weapons manufacturers, including Boeing. Junior Andrew Da'alis is one of the suspended students.
For the university to have some kind of policy like that in place is disgusting. And it really boggles my mind to think about what kind of decision-making processes from any administrator thought that this was an acceptable way and an acceptable course of action.
Mm-hmm. In a statement, a Washington University spokesperson says the school enforced its policies and welcomes free expression and peaceful protest. Da'alis was a guest on St. Louis on the Air. A federal court has ruled that Missouri's administration of food benefits violates federal law, with long wait times and barriers to access causing residents to go hungry. Brian Allison has more.
The 40-page ruling takes aim at the State Department of Social Services for relying on an overburdened telephone system to serve applicants for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP benefits, better known as food stamps. The decision told the stories of several residents who failed to get through multiple times and whose applications were denied for failure to interview. One was told there were more than 700 callers in the queue ahead of her. Another was disconnected with a recording telling her to call again after she was on hold for 3 hours. The judge said the state system violated plaintiffs' rights under federal law and the Due Process Clause of the Constitution. He ordered the agency to fix the system and report its plans to the court within 90 days. I'm Brian Ellison.
The Missouri Valley Conference is losing one of its schools. Missouri State announced it's accepted an offer to join Conference USA starting in the fall of 2025. That conference plays in the highest level of Division I football. The Missouri Valley Football Conference is in the lower-tier Football Bowl subdivision. Missouri State reportedly received a $5 million anonymous gift to defray some of the cost of moving to Conference USA. The move would leave the Missouri Valley Conference and the Missouri Valley Football Conference with 11 schools. The Valley has had several new additions in recent years as other schools have left. League officials have not said how or whether they will seek to replace Missouri State. 2 groups of students from the Fox School District will be in Washington, D.C. this weekend to launch some model rockets. As St. Louis Public Radio's Rachel Littman reports, it's the first time the teams have made it to the national finals of the American Rocketry Challenge.
The competition requires students to build a rocket that can carry an egg to a specific altitude, stay airborne for a period of time, and then bring the egg safely back to the ground.
I guess it is rocket science. Literally, but the kids love it.
Thomas Laybourne is a chemistry teacher at Fox High School and the coach of the school's rocket team. He says even students who don't go into STEM fields in college or beyond benefit from the competition.
Problem solving. They're learning leadership. More than anything, they're learning confidence.
A team from Seckman Middle School is also heading to D.C. for the first time. The winner of the national finals gets to compete in the International Challenge in England. I'm Rachel Littman, St. Louis Public Radio.
Illinois families are once again pushing for the state legislature to pass a permanent child tax credit this spring. Mawa Iqbal has more.
Lawmakers are proposing a yearly $300 credit per child under 18. Married couples who make less than $75,000 and all other filers who make less than $50,000 would be eligible. It's a policy that dozens of advocacy groups like the Illinois Economic Policy Institute have been advocating for years. Liliana Olayo from suburban Aurora says this is her 5th time in Springfield.
You have to choose between paying bills, paying your rent, or, feeding your family. So I don't think any family should be put in that position.
Governor J.B. Pritzker outlined in his budget proposal a less expansive tax credit for families with children under the age of 3. I'm Mawa Iqbal.
Bee populations have been on the decline, leading to food sustainability challenges. But preliminary findings from a St. Louis area pilot study found that bee pollinator habitats along highway corridors with green spaces have the potential to boost bee populations. Researchers from St. Louis University and the Greenhouse Venture studied a portion of a 3.5-acre embankment on the Interstate 44 corridor. The group removed half of the existing grass and non-native trees and replaced them with native prairie plants in one section. The other side was untouched. Araldo Camilo is leading the study. He says within 5 years, the number of bee species in that area jumped from 2 to more than 50 in the replanted section.
If you restore and you have enough of a wild bee population, they will start recolonizing those sites.
This study is part of a nationwide call from the Federal Highway Administration to improve bee habitats on the roadways. The 2024 Missouri legislative session begins its final week today. With only 5 days remaining, St. Louis Public Radio's Brian Moline spoke with Statehouse reporter Sarah Kellogg about what legislators want to accomplish by Friday evening.
Okay, Sarah, 1 week left in the legislative session. What topics do you think will be addressed in the final days?
I think one for sure is going to be IP reform or making it harder to amend the Constitution. I think that's been on the minds of Republican lawmakers and Democratic members all session. So I think that's absolutely going to be the number one concern. Other things could be passing legislation on public safety. There's a lot of omnibus bills that they've been working on. So I think those could definitely be either making their way through the House or Senate this week. But I think definitely that reform is the number one thing.
The Senate was able to pass last week a tax on health care providers like hospitals and nursing homes. It funds roughly a third of the state's Medicaid program. Can you explain this tax and maybe give us an update on that bill's progress?
Yeah, so this tax is called the Federal Reimbursement Allowance, or also known as the FRA. And basically what it is these providers pay this tax and then they kind of get refunded and then some from the federal government, which means it, pays for this big bulk, like you said, a third of the program. And that's been a big point of contention this year in the legislature. There's been, it was up for reauthorization 3 years ago and it had to go to special session. I think there was a lot of questions over it would have to go through special session again this year. Right now, it doesn't look like it. Right now, it made it through the Senate, which was kind of the bigger hurdle. So now it just has the House to go through, and they have until Friday to get that done.
Sarah, something you touched on earlier in our conversation, Republican Senate leadership said on Thursday they intend to bring up the resolution that, if passed by voters, would make it harder to amend Missouri's Constitution. How do you think that debate's going to go?
I think that debate is going to immediately begin in a filibuster. We got a little bit of a preview of that last week when this proposal, like you said, that would make it harder to amend the Constitution was brought up before the Senate floor, and Senate Democrats immediately stood up and started filibustering. I think we're going to see more of that. Senate Minority Leader John Rizzo said that Democrats intend to filibuster it as long as possible, as long as they can. And I think that, for them, their sticking point is this language that they think has been added to make the bill or the resolution seem more appealing for voters. It's called ballot candy a lot. Like one of them is an example is only citizens of the U.S. can vote on constitutional amendments. Well, that's already against state law, but it's in there. And for them, it makes it feels like they're trying to trick voters. At least that's what Democrats are saying about this provision. And so I think as long as that language is on there, Senate Democrats are absolutely not letting that pass.
What are some of the scenarios that could happen with this resolution?
Right now, I kind of see three, and one is that the Senate Democrats continue to filibuster the bill the entire week and by 6 p.m. on Friday, and then the resolution does not pass. Another one is that enough senators, if 18 senators sign a motion known as a previous question, it's basically a motion to end debate. They could sign that, end the filibuster by the Democrats, and then pass it with this language. The other one is that basically the Senate can, quote unquote, refuse to adopt these House amendments, this extra language put on, and they can ask the House to strip it out. And then the House can pass this Senate bill without the language and without this, quote unquote, ballot candy. And Senator Rizzo pretty much has said, if that candy's not on there, they're sitting right down. They consider that a fair fight. So those are some of the ways I think this could turn out next week.
Any other bills or issues that we should watch this week?
I think a lot of the focus is going to be on this initiative petition reform, this constitutional amendment, or on the FRA, because again, that's billions of dollars in the Medicaid. But there's a couple things that could pop up. There's a fix on a senior property tax freeze that might make its way, where basically it says anybody who would be 62 or older would qualify for it. Another would be this big omnibus public safety bill that, for example, criminalizes celebratory gunfire or heightens penalties to harm police dogs. It's like a huge omnibus bill, but I think the focus really is on those two things.
Sarah Kellogg is the Statehouse reporter for St. Louis Public Radio. Sarah, thanks so much for all of your work this session.
Absolutely, no problem.
Sarah was speaking with editor Brian Moline. And you can follow more coverage of the Missouri legislative session at stlpr.org. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this has been The Gateway. Have a good day.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.